Now that we know something that everybody wants to do, here's something that nobody wants to do. Nobody wants to be the bearer of bad news. That job is totally overrated, right? And there have been times where you have had to do that, and maybe you shied away from it. Maybe you avoided it at all costs. Those of us who hate confrontation, those of us who hate to be the bearer of bad news, we're already ready to say, don't shoot the messenger. We don't like that job. And I think one thing, I think parenthood will prepare you a little bit to be that guy. I can think of times where I've had to, we still have, moderately little people running around our house. Many of you know that. And prepare for the outburst of tears and accusations when, something we thought we were going to do isn't going to work out. Even if it's like, nope, you're not going to watch another show before you go to bed, ranging to, I think 2 years ago, we had to cancel a trip because, there was a bug going through our house and we had too many eruptions from too many children. And we're like, we can't go on the road like this, guys. I'm sorry, we can't go. And it's just like, nobody wants to deliver bad news. People who are, their job is notorious for this, is doctors. Like they ought to have a class in med school preparing you for the number of times you have to sit down with somebody and really give them the bad news. One doctor sat his patient down and he said, all right, do you want the good news or the bad news first? And the patient said, give me the good news. And so the doctor said, okay, we are naming a disease after you. Yeah, it's a tough job. See, nobody wants a job like that. It's reminded me of times in my life where I've had to be the person. I think one of the hardest times in my family is a few years ago when my father suddenly passed away. It's the only grandfather that my children have ever known. And so to sit them down and to talk them through that was really hard. I think of a time, it feels like many years ago now, but there was a time where God was calling Courtney and me away from the church that we were at, the first full-time church I'd ever been at. There was no student ministry there before we got there. 6 or 7 years later, hundreds and hundreds of students every week and lots of adult leaders and just this, thriving thing. And we got away for our annual winter retreat. And the first night of the retreat is my job to tell them that I wouldn't be there that much longer. And if you've ever been in a moment like that, there's just such a wide range of reaction. There are some people, there are tears. Other people, there's shock. Other people, anger even. Some people are immediately open and vulnerable. Other people shut down. That's what happens in a moment of bad news. And some of you are thinking about the last time that you were in a moment like that. There's maybe a few people here right now wondering if I have an announcement, a change to deliver here at the beginning of 2024. I don't. But I don't. But and listen. I would never toy with your emotions. However, this will be helpful. Did you notice how your body over the last few minutes gets back in touch with that tension? Of how it feels when the ground is moving underneath your feet. In a life when change can be so unpleasant, in such difficult moments where one announcement can lead to 500 questions and hard things, soul scraping, faith testing, exhausting, anxiety-inducing things. And we have to sometimes be the people who are the bearers of bad news. So, nobody wants that job. Why do we do that? Why do we deliver bad news? I'll tell you why. And I would even say it this way. I can think of only one type of person who actually wants that job and is good for it. It's somebody who loves people beyond themselves, right? To love is to forewarn. Wouldn't you agree with that? That to forewarn people is to love people. And we refuse to allow the people in our lives to just blindly walk into a pit, that just blindly walk into a firestorm. And at the beginning of a new year, I want to point out what an interesting place you and I are in. We go around the sun regularly. We're grown-ups. We know how this stuff works. And think about how we typically approach these moments. This time it's 2024. Here we are. And in these moments, we love to barrel into them with such optimism and such forward thinking. And we're just, when we're riding that wave, what are we doing? We're thinking about all the things we want to fix. We want to think about all the things that we want to accomplish. And moments like that carry such hope with them. Annually, we come to this sort of emotional high. But let's just include historically 2023, 2022, 2021. Just the batch of the last few years, historically, that set of 12 months wasn't just all highs and optimism, was it? That everybody here can say, I didn't realize what was coming for me. Some really, really hard things that I wasn't ready for, and a few of them almost did me in. 2023, 22, 21, 20. How many people would just say, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about? Raise your hand. If you can think back in the last few years, and like, if you had told me, I wouldn't have believed you, and I would have no plan how to get through that. See, that's the fact. When we take a step back and we celebrate things not in mornings and afternoons, but in years, is that both are coming, and we don't know which one for who, when. Now, am I here to be a downer about 2024? But it's not about being a downer, it's about being a preparer. I want us to do today, at the beginning of the series, and we're starting the series across all our campuses, can't wait to tell you more about it. I want us to do together one of my favorite things to do in life when I know that I'm about to go through a hard thing and I have so many questions and I'm so confused. This is what I do. I grab a Bible. So you grab a Bible now. You grab your hardcover, power it on if you brought a digital version. Would you find with me the book of John and look for chapter 16 in the book of John? While you're turning there, I want you to know what we've wandered into. We're pursuing a highly unique moment, not just in history, but even across your Bible. We don't have moments like this. John 13, John 14, John 15, John 16, John 17 describe this highly intimate moment. Like it allows you, those chapters allow you to be a fly on the wall with Jesus and his closest followers in a highly sensitive moment. These are the moments Jesus shared with his crew the very night he was betrayed. He was arrested, beaten, crucified. Jesus is preparing his disciples for some major changes. Preparing them for his impending future, preparing them for the troubles that lie ahead for them. To forewarn is to love, and Jesus doesn't want them to be caught off guard. So he's telling them what is coming. And today, next week, week after, all Sundays, our Sundays in January, we are going to spend in John chapter 16. And we are going to discover some of the same truths for them that we need for our lives, and specifically useful at a time in the calendar year where we are standing behind a door of possibilities and unknowns, ups and downs. And this is how this series is going to help us. is that as we chart a path of following Jesus, this is something we got to be reminded of. We have been given the gift to walk in his victory. That is a gift for everybody you know. Anyone who's ever locked eyes with you, that person is somebody that God wants. That is someone he wants to share heaven life, Jesus' life with. That's why Jesus came. When we surrender to Jesus, we get the gift. We can still go our own way. That's dumb. We can go Jesus' way. We can walk in his victory. It's not on you to create your own victories. And what's more is that walking a victorious life as you follow Jesus is all about walking not in a life that's immune to tragedy and hardship, but being prepared for tragedy and hardship. And in this way, Jesus is doing the whole, fail to plan, plan to fail kind of thing. Because in life, let's just face it, if you're not caught off guard, you're already winning, right? So that's what Jesus is doing for them. That's what Jesus is going to do for us. Let's dive into this series with an intention. May Jesus prepare us for the year ahead. Good, bad, ugly. So that when the bottom drops out on our lives, we will still remain close to Jesus, who is our life, come what may. So let's get into God's word. John 16. We'll start at the very first verse, very first verse that we see there, and we'll be in verses 1 through 4. So John 16, verse 1, I have told you these things so that you won't abandon your faith. We have different versions of the English translation of the scriptures here. And so what you're holding might say, so that you won't abandon your faith. Or yours might say something like, so that you won't fall. Or Jesus saying, so that you won't fall away. All of those descriptors, they come from the literal word that Jesus speaks here in Greek, skandalethron, which means to have been caught unaware and fall because of some surprise obstacle. It's very interesting to me that Jesus is identifying moments ahead where you could and probably will fall if you don't know what's coming. So he's not saying, guys, I know how bad at walking you are, and so I'm just trying to give you a heads up. He's not saying, I know that rebellious streak you've got. He's not saying, look, I'm locking in on this moral flaw that you have, so I need... He's saying, no. Skandalethron is like, look, I want you to be aware because it would be understandable if anybody loses their balance in a moment like the ones that are coming your way. Now, we need to talk about this because hard things are all around us. Hard things fill our lives. I want to take a moment to talk about hard things to give context to Jesus' words. Let's just if we drew a circle on the screen today and talk about the many, many ways that hard things fill our lives. All shapes, all sizes. There are so many unexpected wrinkles in the plan, and sometimes they are a devastating turn of events. Stuff that inconveniences you, stuff that makes you mad, stuff that's just like, this is not the way it's supposed to go. All shapes, all sizes, all different reasons. I think of many years ago, it was around 2009. Courtney, that was my wife. We were in a tough season, and we were just in a season where we really could use a win. And I thought I'd try to come up with one that was the season where we're trying to figure out what was next for us, what God had for us. And so we're kind of in limbo, and, it seemed like a really good season. Courtney's like, she was in her later 20s. She's like, I really want to get my degree. And so she started going to school nearby. And then it was like, well, it seems like a good opportunity to play a sport, because you may not know this about Courtney. Courtney was a stud athlete from her childhood all the way through high school. And she was like, oh, chance to be a college athlete, which seemed totally appropriate. So she started running for the school, which is awesome. And this day came where she was going to run an hour away, and she went on the bus. And I thought, I'm going to surprise Courtney. And it seemed good timing to decide that it was her birthday because she said it was okay that I just kind of declare when her birthday is every year. Anytime 2 months leading up to her actual birthday, which is Christmas Eve, I get to just say, nope, today's your birthday, because I mean, let's face it, you share a birthday with Jesus. That's a complete ripoff, right? So it's like October. I'm like, it's going to be her birthday, and I splurged with money that we barely had for some concert tickets that a band that we really loved at the time, and I'm gonna surprise her, and we'll cheer on the race, and then, yeah, we're done. And I'm gonna put her in the car. I'm gonna take you home in the car. I'm gonna go on the bus with the other athletes, and then we're gonna drive in a different direction. I'm gonna say, surprise! I brought a whole change of clothes for you, and we're gonna go into the city. She loves going into the city, and we're gonna go see the show. And it's like this big woo. And we did all that. We got in the car and we're driving. I couldn't wait. I said all that stuff. And she said, no, I don't really feel like doing that. I was like, yeah. She's like, I don't feel good. And like everything that was built up in my head, I'll talk about a wrinkle in the plan. I was like, and I'm trying to make, the be a good friend, be a good husband thing on the outside match up with what I was feeling with on the inside. Because on the outside, it's like, okay, and we just, change directions and start heading home. And boy, I don't know how long I did this, but I know me. I did it for plenty of time. You know how inside you're still fighting with yourself and you're just saying that stuff like, last time I ever, and... if she'd just be more flexible, and why can't she appreciate, and you just do all that junk. And it's like needless to say, the fact of the matter is it just didn't work out. And we need to remember that sometimes life just does not line up for us the way we hoped. It just doesn't work according to the plan, and that's just the way it is. There are just going to be mornings where you need all the lights to be green, and instead they're red, and you run into 2 trains, and then you get a flat tire. And that is just life. And sometimes, eventually, we're actually glad later. Isn't that funny about us? Like when Courtney's feeling mysteriously crummy and not even apologetic about it, and then a few days later we find out, oh, maybe being pregnant with our first child may have something to do with it. Oh, okay, okay, never mind, And I wouldn't trade that for everything, but at the time, that was such like an irritating turn of events, and that I would say belonged in our circle, and yet. You hearing me? How many times, if you've been living as a Christian and you've been aware of Christians around you, how many times have you heard somebody say that such and such didn't work out, and so it was just too hard for me to believe in Jesus after that, so I quit. And God doesn't deserve what I have to bring. I'm out. Christians are too hypocritical. Life is too hard. Devotion's too complicated. Too inconvenient and all-consuming. So I just quit. Let me give it to you straight, because I'm your friend. That is a bad idea. And I'm so sorry for your letdown. But there is like no disappointment of any size that makes that make sense, that makes that wise. It's not wise. It's foolish of us. It's immature. We've all done it. I don't know what kind of departure that led to, what kind of radio silence that led to for you, between you and God. But a disappointment of any size is a profoundly poor excuse to throw away your faith in Christ at the worst time imaginable. Sociologist Christian Smith studied why people drop out of church and why they walk away from their faith. And it's interesting, as he looked at the data, he made a conclusion. He went, oh, the problem is that many people that we're surveying are calling themselves Christians, but the religion they're practicing is not Christianity. What would you call it? Well, he gave it a name, moral therapeutic deism, which is just a mouthful. But here's how he defines it. Moral therapeutic deism is worshiping a God who blesses people who are good and nice and fair and helps believers be happy and feel good about themselves. The end. And if that's what you signed up for, okay, how's that working out for you? It's not Christianity, which means that when our farce of Christianity crashes against reality, we're going to be just severely disappointed. Christian Smith says we shouldn't be surprised to see people of any age walk away from a faith like that. And let me just say again, I understand very well what it feels like on the inside when we've been upset, caught off guard, and we take our ball and we want to go home, right? But that never justifies it, and that never makes it a good move. So let's go back to the hard things. There are hard things that happen that mess with our faith, and eventually we come to a point where we say, all right, maybe that was more immature of me, that I shouldn't have put it on God, that I didn't get all the green lights today. You know what I'm saying? But then some of those hard things, and I'll put these in red, some of those hard things that come our way, they are so shocking and they are so disturbing, and you take it so personally because you don't know how to do it any other way, that trial, that hardship will grab you by the faith and just shake you around like hard. And Jesus knows it. And these are the times in life where we find ourselves saying, we hear our loved ones saying, all right, well, if God actually loves us, then why is my spouse deteriorating with this disease? If God answers prayer, why did he say no when we prayed so much and we prayed so hard? If God is good, then why am I still suffering down here while he's like up there not providing, not feels like he's not even talking to me? Do you see the difference between the black and the red? The layer that comes with some of the hard things in life is it also provides us with this theological brain buster of trying to match what God teaches us, has taught us, with his very character, and make that make sense with our circumstances. Are those not difficult moments? Incredibly hard. And then, some of the most difficult moments that can truly rattle your faith, and you just feel like emotionally and spiritually you're putting your hand on the handle to just jump out of the plane. Sometimes it happens in our lives where the hardship that you experience is so high on difficulty and it's so high on shock value, and it's happening to you not because you were just out there doing you, but it's happening to you because you were just out there belonging to Jesus. I mean, that's hard. That's hard. I mean, let's turn back to the text. Remember when Jesus is coaching up his disciples? He's preparing them. He says, I've told you these things so that you won't abandon your faith. Let's keep reading. He says, for you will be expelled from the synagogues. All right, that is horrible news for any Jew. The synagogues were the local centers of worship. This is where you find your people. And the camaraderie of culture and spirituality are lived out in relationships. To be banned from that is beyond unjust. It's beyond highly inconvenient, and it gets into it's shaming and humiliating, and it's darn near apocalyptic. He says, you're going to be banned from the synagogues. He goes on to say, and the time is coming when those who kill you, and you're like, I'm going to say, what? Those who kill you will think they're doing a holy service for God. This is because they've never known the Father or me. Whoa. So what I just heard you say, Jesus, was expect to die, but like expect to die soon. And not just expect to die soon, but plan to get murdered. Man, dude, I thought when I started following you, I was joining the winner's circle. This is not my definition of up and to the right. Plan on getting murdered by people who are supposed to be my friends, like friendly fire, people who think they are doing God, same God, a huge favor by taking you and yours out. Jesus says, yes, I am telling you these things now so that when they happen, you will remember my warning. I didn't tell you earlier because I was going to be with you a while longer. If you have any familiarity with John chapter 14, you know that this is where Jesus starts to break up with his disciples. John 13, John 14. And he's referring to that when he says, I knew this before. I could have told you before, but it wasn't the time because I was still going to be with you. Now's the time for you to be thinking about this. And there's really no sense at your life turning upside down and you being blindsided. I want you to be prepared. We here to be a downer? No, we're here to be a preparer. So, let's talk about silver linings. Silver linings from what we just read. I'll give you two. One of them is this. Later, it will be supremely encouraging. I would even say anchoring for the disciples to know that Jesus already called this. Have you had a day recently where you've thanked God that your leader knows the future? I mean, you might manage hedge funds, and the smartest among you is still making predictions. Our leader already knows what's going to go down. We've got a great leader. He already knows. He's the great I am. He's like, I don't just know the future. I'm like already in your future. So no matter how unpleasant your future may appear, the fact that Jesus already knows says something about him and the team that you're on. And the fact that the one who already knows cares enough about you and me to let us know, to include us with that intel when things get dark, that should steady us. That should help us focus on making our best next moves. So, silver lining number one, Jesus already knows the future. And here's the second one. Jesus very helpfully identifies for us in maybe the hardest time of our lives, the most important thing to do. The real thing that we should avoid doing in a tumultuous time and at any cost is what? Never loosen your grip on your faith. This is just one more reason why we call a relationship with Jesus your most important, life's most important relationship. At any cost, never loosen your grip on your faith. You release anything and everything else before you let go of Jesus. D.A. Carson is a New Testament scholar, and he writes a simple line of commentary on these verses that you and I are studying, and here's the line that jumped out at me. He said this: the greatest danger for these disciples, the greatest danger the disciples will confront from the opposition of the world, it's not even death. It's apostasy. Remember verse 1? I'm telling you these things so that you do not fall away. This is the moment in the locker room where Jesus says, boys, eyes up here. Eyes up here. Even when the bad in your life just gets pure evil, and you feel so slighted, so sucker punched, and you're dazed and you're confused and you're about to start flailing, or you want to throw in the towel, you must keep this one wit about you. I do not want you to lose your faith in me. So, over the course of this series, as we hear Jesus talk to his disciples, Jesus is going to tell us things over the course of this month that are going to prepare us for 2024 that probably apply to everything in that circle. But I wanted you to know that not everything in that, not every hardship is equal to the other. Some of them are even harder, and they carry a grandiose spiritual weight to them. And the worst of the worst, Jesus prepares us for all of it. All of it. And we need way less Christians saying, you know what, I quit. You know what, taking a season off. Every season, that'll be a month, turns into 3 years. You know what, I've had enough of you. I'm just going to kind of do this. We need way less of that. We need to know we're not immune to these moments. None of us are. Jesus wants to prepare us for them. And what a call this is for us to walk into a new year with humility and just committing ourselves to the fact that Christ is everything to us, and remembering that no follower of Christ is impervious to doubt and regression and even falling away from us. Do you think that me, because I'm on stage, or do you think any Christian in this room is actually impervious that can say, I'll never fall away? See, this is what I want us to know as we grow. Is that it's not a commentary on the courage you have in your convictions to also be humble about your humanity. Think of it this way. In this very room, we've got the most outspoken, hard-headed leader of the pack, Peter. Just moments before John 16, hear Jesus say, I'm going to go somewhere you can't follow me. And Peter's like, no. I follow you everywhere you go. You go, I go. You go, I go. There's you, there's me. I will even die for you, Jesus. Laying it on the table right now. And right in front of his friends, too. Jesus is like, actually, Peter, before the sun comes up again, you're going to deny that you even knew me 3 times. Be crushing for any of us, but especially those of us who think that a moment like that would be impossible, that we don't have moments like that. We gotta work it out. So what do we do with this? Well, we submit again to Jesus, and we say, Lord, you know when those moments are coming for me, and I'm praying right now that when that moment comes, give me all the grace and all the mercy that you have, and I'm going to receive the grace and the mercy that you've already offered me because you're preparing me. You're helping me kind of slide off my high horse and get in position to let you lead me even through the toughest moments that I never expected in my life. Now, do you remember the first line that we read when Jesus said, I have told you these things? I've told you these things so that you won't abandon your faith. I want to look back. This is what I want to do is we're kind of winding our time up here. I want to give you a few things to write down, some things that you can think about this week. They will lead us into more exploring of John 16. Feel free to read ahead. And I can't wait for next Sunday. But let me just, for today, let me give you a few things to write down. And I want to explore what these things, when Jesus said this, I've told you these things, what was Jesus telling them? Well, for some of you, it's just a page over. We're going to go to John 15. I want to give you 3 things that Jesus has already told them that I'm going to categorize as, header on your note sheet, unhelpful tendencies. Like Jesus has already sort of given us a warning about us. I'm telling you these things. This is how you tend to walk into stuff. And this is how it can go south for you from there. Unless you're prepared, okay? So unhelpful tendencies that we have, these are coming out of John 15. Here's the first tendency. I don't think anybody's going to argue with this. We tend to go it alone when we shouldn't. Our tendency is to go it alone when we shouldn't. And I know that's a crazy part of us, where we have a moment in our life, and I'm speaking to people who have surrendered their lives to Christ. You can think of the moment in your life where you gave it all away and you said, Jesus, I need you to rescue me. I need you to save me. I need you to lead me. And then somehow, some way, life happened, and then we're over here going, I got this. I could do this. And your life is all about the confidence that a person can have in themselves, and it's overconfident, it's spiritually overconfident and cocky, and it's presumptuous. There is zero active submission in that season of your life. Been there? We in those moments we call ourselves followers of Christ, but we have completely lost sight of a leader, because we're just out there doing our thing. Well, what is one of these things that Jesus has told them? He told them in John 15, verse 4, hey, listen, a branch cannot produce fruit if it is severed from the vine, and you cannot be fruitful unless you remain in me. Yeah, I'm the vine, you the branch. And those who remain in me, and I remain in them, they will produce much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. And is he saying that like paralysis apart from me? No, he's saying you run the risk of continuing on with your life thinking you're going somewhere. You're not. I've called you into eternal purpose, eternal productivity, and yet you're getting back on the hamster wheel? Apart from me, you can accomplish nothing. This is one of these things I want to tell you so that you don't fall away. Christians, the habits that you have in your life that lead to growing a relationship with Christ, whatever it is that you're doing, to dialogue with Jesus, to know his heart more, to see more trust between you accrue, that is what ensures that you will be truly living the life that he gives you. That is what ensures that you are being eternally productive on Tuesday. Whatever you're doing, do that. And whatever distractions that you have from that, whatever happens in your life that leads you to wander away from that, that is what sets you up and sets me up for a cold, dark, lonely season. So that's his warning. Hey, you guys, you have a tendency to go it alone. I want you to know that. 2024, or the year 4. But with every warning comes hope. This is, right, to forewarn is to love. Like, this is what warnings do. They always provide hope. Where is the hope here? Well, the hope is this, that you can remain in Christ. You can actively feed the connection. This is what we're talking about here, like a branch on a vine. Dare I say, you don't even, when it's healthy, it's as healthiest, don't even know where one starts and the other one ends. And the more you stay connected with Jesus, you, branch, will be growing, beautiful, colorful, vibrant, tasty, like fruit beyond your ability. And people can be like, how? Where does this come from? And you're like, I'm just connected to the right person. His life is pumping through me, growing things that the life I had before I met him never could have grown at all. And when you see that fruit growing, when you remain and you see that fruit growing, and it takes its time, God takes his time, but he's always got the right time, you'll never want to leave that spot. So, like unhelpful tendency number 1, we tend to go it alone. We should not do that. Unhelpful tendency number 2, we tend to behave like it's our show, and it's not. Like, this is another recurring mentality that I regularly have to confront. Do you ever just barrel into a week and you don't say it, you just kind of vibe in it, that my life is about me, that my life is about my life, it's about my drive, it's about my resources. Here's what happens on the bad days. All the weight of your life turns into pressure that falls on your shoulders. And then it starts getting heavy. And then the question starts coming up, what are you going to do about it? And so then it goads us to just start fighting harder and throwing more elbows. And it tells me, you need to get up earlier. And then it tells me, you need to stay up later. And you need to be okay with burning out a little bit until eventually we get exhausted and we get sick and we get depressed. And then we look up and go, well, I wonder where God went. What's up with that? Hey, bad approach. Bad approach. We have this tendency to think this is all our show. It's not our show. Look at John 15, verse 16. Jesus reminds his disciples, you didn't choose me. I chose you. And I chose you, and I appointed you to go and produce lasting fruit. You're hungry to leave an impact with your life that is beyond you. See, that's all on me. You didn't choose me. I chose you. And some of us, maybe recently have chosen Jesus and we go, oh, no, I chose you. I remember. And you know what? The disciples could have said the same thing. Jesus, like, look, Philip, Matthew, like all you guys, everybody's got a slightly different story here. You can read about it. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. All of you guys had a moment where you didn't know who I was, and then you knew who I was. And you'd never seen me before, but now you've locked eyes with me, and you heard me say, hey, follow me. And you made a decision. And other people didn't follow me and you did. You remember that day, don't you? And you've said to other people, my life has never been the same. I know there was that day, but listen, as you've gotten to know me, you know that who I am is the great I am. You've come to understand that I'm not no ordinary person. Like, I come from eternity past and eternity future. Your belief in me that I'm God, then you need to understand this, that as you grow spiritually, you start looking at this relationship completely differently. That yes, I remember when I did the most responsible thing I ever could. I chose life's most important relationship with Christ. I yielded myself to him like I did that. As time goes on, you realize something, that he's always held on to me way harder than I've ever held on to him. He didn't have to come say hi to me. But he did. He made me aware. He made the whole thing possible. And you're like, well, that doesn't fit in my head very well. Well, you're going to love it on the hardest days. You're going to love it on the days when you can't hold your own life up and Jesus holds you up anyway. See, we tend to think it's our show, but what we want to grow into is getting our show lost in his. Because you know what he will do? This is what gives us hope. Jesus' strong arms will uphold his entire eternal kingdom. He'll do that. Jesus will make sure that every eternal promise he has made your heart will always be true. And at that point, what do I have to do? I just have to show up for work. That's a profoundly more peaceful, assuring life. So we got this tendency to think it's our show. It's not our show. That's the greatness of the God that we serve. Here's one more unhelpful tendency. We would just want to be aware of it. We have a tendency to take the world's hatred personally, and we shouldn't. Can I tell you something about myself that I just wish wasn't true a lot of the time? I like to be liked. And maybe you can relate. Maybe that's not everybody. I think some people have an easier time with this than others. I like to be liked. It can keep me awake when somebody has misunderstood me or judged me unfairly. Can you relate to this? Stupid little fantasies start crossing my mind. The things that I could do to stop that person in their tracks and talk them back into, like you catch them up to speed. What a wonderful guy I am, and your brain just gets real busy, just trying to arrange that. Well, look at how Jesus goes on to warn them. This isn't one more of these things. He tells them in verse 18, if the world hates you, and by the way, if is a conditional word. It means that this might happen, but in the greater context, we know that he's talking about things that are likely to happen. He's already warned them in chapter 16. So if pretty much means when. If you're a disciple of Christ, buckle up. When the world hates you, remember that it hated me first. The world would love you as one of its own if you belonged to it, but you are no longer a part of the world. He goes on to say, a slave is not greater than the master. This was a common phrase that they understood. No student's greater than his teacher. You heard Jesus say that before too. A slave's not greater than the master, and since they persecuted me, and we're just getting warmed up because you remember what night it is. Since they persecuted me, naturally they will persecute you. And if they had listened to me, then they would listen to you. We tend to take other people's disdain so personally. Jesus is like, I just want to flag that as a warning. Because look, at this point in my life, I am learning to accept that I might not be everybody's cup of tea. Furthermore, I am not above being hated, disgusting people because I'm an idiot sometimes. Like, all that fits in my head. But we have such a tendency to want to have control of our own reputation that it can really tip us over and lead us to go so far out of Christ's way to correct other people's opinions of us. When in fact, when people disdain us simply because we belong to Jesus, that was never about you. In those moments, we're actually thinking of ourselves a little too highly. Do you remember when you were a teenager? And Your mom didn't have the patience to wake you up gently anymore. My mom would fling the door open and slap the door and flick the lights on, be like, I gotta go, 15 minutes. And I just remember I could not scrunch my eyes hard enough to block out all the light that just flooded the room. And it channels immediately into cortisol spikes and angry Jesus, like, that's what's happening. Light from me is coming out of your lives to people who are used to living in the dark. They've known nothing else. And the way they act to you, it's not you. It's light coming through you that will help them if they can have the patience to adjust. Not everybody will. They'll just curse your name and throw a shoe at you as you walk away. Like, we have this tendency to take all that personally. And here's the hope. Here's the bright side in 2024. If Christian persecution, your belonging to Jesus, gets you in hot water, puts you in some awkward conversations, people walk away not accepting you more or liking you more, listen, here's the hope. Probably means that you didn't do something wrong. It means you did something right. It means that when it was on the line, you were faithful. That you were devoted, that you were behaving like a kid, you were behaving your kingdom citizenship, and they just don't love you for it yet. They just don't understand it yet. Jesus wants to see a faith that grows in you and me, that doesn't just accept it when, expect good things to happen. Jesus wants you to be ready, come what may, to hang on to your new life and ride that puppy all the way to where we get to go to a place where there are no more hardships. Eternal bliss, perfection, that's later. Now, we've got a strong taste for it in our hearts. He's put us on a mission to help other people. And it's the worst time to lose sight. Come what may. I'll close with a story. A lot of you here know the story of the Titanic. You know, the Titanic was a ship that they bragged about as being unsinkable, right? Like, still kind of blows my mind. That was just 100 years ago, where we were making stuff for people and going, you won't die if you get on this boat. Like, we really had to advertise that, like we were so proud. This one's pretty good, take it across the ocean. And yet, what you know about the Titanic is of many ships, but famous for the unsinkable ship. It sank April 15th, year 1912, 2:20 in the morning. Here's what I didn't know. I did some reading on that this week, and here's what I didn't know. I didn't know that in the hours before the collision, there were warnings. Like no less than 5 different warnings from surrounding ships. Those warnings were detailed messages. They were pinpointing the location of heavy pack ice and a great number of icebergs. There was another ship, same general vicinity of the Atlantic Ocean, the Californian, who radioed, I believe, multiple times, just out of courtesy to say, hey, I don't know about you guys, our ship is at a dead stop. We are surrounded by dense field ice. So, what led to the tragedy? 2 things. Overconfidence. I mean, the captain was heard saying, even God himself could not sink this ship. You think that about yourself? And the second, ignoring the warnings. And that is how more than 1,500 people, from the working class to the wealthy, lost their lives in the wee hours of the morning in the Atlantic Ocean and died by drowning or hypothermia. You and I can listen to Jesus' words and say, hey, that didn't line up with what I thought I was signing up for. and we can be dismayed about the potential of a bleak forecast, or we can be encouraged that my leader already knows the future. And he cares enough about us to give us a heads up. And he has already provided ways to use it for our good and to help us remain faithful. He's already said, I'm not immunizing you from hardship and tragedy. I am preparing you for it. And in this life, if you're not caught off guard, you are already winning. Rest assured, Jesus will never take back his words from his word to your heart, written in Romans 8. Does it mean that he no longer loves us? If we have trouble or calamity or persecuted or we're hungry or we're destitute or we find ourselves in danger or we're threatened with death, no, it never does. Despite all these things, overwhelming victory is ours through Christ, who loved us and loves us still. So no, I don't know what 2024 is going to bring you. I don't know what 2024 is going to bring my family. I don't know what 2024 is going to bring our church any more than anyone else. I don't know the future, but I do know the one who holds the future. And my bets are not on a new year as much as they are on the one who makes all things new. And if you and I can walk closely with him and follow his lead, that I know we will be ready, come what may. We're going to close our service with a time to give ourselves a chance to really just open ourselves up to the Lord. I want to encourage you to just bow your head. Feel free to close your eyes. I think as our team takes the stage and is going to lead us in a song that I think is just really going to help our hearts. Have a chance to listen or sing with or whatever, but where you sit, moments like these are so great for journaling your thoughts out into a prayer, onto a connect card so that we can pray for you this week. Journal it into your notes if it's something that you need to take home for yourself. God's doing something in this moment for you, I believe, that you should decide what to do with it next. We've even done this. We're going to give you the option to pray with somebody else. You've walked in with such a burden and you just need to be prayed over and prayed for, or maybe it's somebody else's thing that's burdening you. You bring that into just a moment of prayer with one of our prayer partners. We have prayer partners who are going to stand up and kind of stand up around the periphery of the room right now, so you'll be able to identify them when you make your next move. Praying, worshiping, with your Bible open, articulating prayer requests. Find someone who will pray with you. That's what these moments are going to be good for. Lord, we're asking for your help. I want to pray for the person who is putting their trust in you for the very first time. Like in a way that you would say is more level-headed. We're choosing you despite the bad things. That our expectations of you and the world are more fair after a moment like this, Father. I want to pray for all of us, though. Some of us submitting ourselves to you again for the 100th time, very aware of the thing that was distracting us, the thing that was really just putting us into a mental combat, trying to align your promises with our experience. We need you for moments like these. We invite you in. We invite you in to talk to our hearts. Hold us close. Tell us again that you love us. Flex those muscles again. Remind us of what you've promised and how sure we are in Christ. I pray for our church, Father, that this church of people who are honestly going through it together in relationships will amount to being a strong church, like a lighthouse on a hill, calling more and more people to come and just take you at your